When you buy a Subaru from Subaru of Gwinnett, you're buying more than a vehicle. You're buying safety for your family, an investment that will hold its value, and something that will last a long time. You're buying trust. For a limited time, celebrate all the 2025 models during the Subaru A Lot to Love event, now through March 31st. Whether you're looking to match your adventurous spirit with the 2025 Subaru Outback or lean on the reliability of the 2025 Subaru Forester, Subaru of Gwinnett has the perfect fit for your family. Stop in for a test drive on Satellite Boulevard in Duluth or start your shopping online at SubaruofGwinnett.com.
Welcome to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. And if you are one of my new listeners joining us at this new time at 5 p.m. on Saturday, right here on Extra 106.3, thank you. This is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's topic is the U.S. Department of Education. Do we really need them? That's the topic. Do we really need them? Do we need the Department of Education? But first, let me start with some current events and give a little bit of my take. President Trump stated that Palestinians would not have the right to return to Gaza under his proposed U.S. takeover plan, describing it as a real estate development for the future. Saudi Arabia has rejected Trump's Gaza's plan. Of course they did, along with Jordan's King Abdullah. Both of them are planning to express concerns about the proposal's potential to spread chaos in the region during a meeting with President Trump. President Trump's comments have faced condemnation from Palestinian leaders who see them as dismissive of their rights, while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the plan revolutionary. The proposal suggests relocating Palestinians to resettlement sites outside of Gaza, which has been met with widespread rejection from the Arab world and the international community. Here's my take. First of all, what I believe many don't know is how deep the indoctrination of hate that runs amongst the nationality of these people. I watched the government-owned video on October 7th, and it was of the October 7th. I'm sorry, I didn't watch it on October 7th. It was of the October 7th attack. And what stood out to me was the number of children who I saw running alongside the pickup trucks that was bringing in Israeli hostages. And these young children, and we're talking about kids no more than possibly 6 or 7 years old, yelling, "Dogs, dogs," and hitting the sides of the trucks. In America, we are fully aware of how hate can be taught. And what I see is hate being taught to these kids. And what I found out by talking to people who are a part of the IDF and part of their the Israeli military structure is that is one of their major components, is that while they may kill one regime, another regime is waiting to arise because they have been indoctrinated since birth. So that leads me to another issue. So in 2005, Israel unilaterally disengaged from Gaza, withdrawing their military presence, and they dismantled the settlements in that region. This move was aimed to help reduce conflict, and it was viewed by some as an attempt to kind of provide the Palestinian people with control over their own personal affairs. Well, following the withdrawal, the Hamas organization, the terrorist organization, then ran for office once the Palestinian people now had control over this portion of the land. In 2006, just 1 year later, the Hamas organization won the Palestinian legislative elections in 2006. And then by 2007, Hamas took control of Gaza, leading to a split in governance between Hamas in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. So what happened? The Israeli people gave the Palestinian people Gaza. And let's keep in mind, Palestine is not a country. Palestinian people can live anywhere in the Middle East, but we have people who are choosing to live under Hamas leadership and governance. That is a problem. This is why I am one of those people who absolutely do believe that we do need to look at doing something different. And I am not one of those people who think that We're going to criticize all that Israel is doing to defend themselves, and we're going to pretend like the Palestinian people that would be occupying this space again are somehow Palestinian people that don't have or share the same thoughts and ideology as the people who they set under as their form of government. Please understand, they could have gone to the West Bank. They could have gone to Egypt. They could have assimilated in Israel, because there are a lot of Palestinians who live in Israel and who are assimilating and are trying to live productive lives. So what I don't want is for people to continue to push this narrative that somehow this is a bad thing to move them 9 miles away from Israel. To be clear, they are just literally 9 miles away from occupying Israel. And what happened on October 7th was able to happen because they were so close to Israel. So let's just keep that in mind. And if Gaza was ran by people who actually cared about their people and not solely cared about power and control, then there may be a chance, but not when you have a terrorist organization running the government, an organization that hates the country it depends on for humanitarian support. Then the people will have to suffer. So yes, Gaza needs to be revamped, but here is a question that I do have. Do we do it? And if so, can we do it after we get our country back on track? That's my only request. I want to see Israel. And put a lot of money towards restoring this area and providing some protection. And let's keep it clear. For all the people who say that Israel's not an ally, Israel has all these wrongdoings that they've done, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I don't think there's any perfect country. I don't think there's any country that's going to look out for America more so than look out for itself. But that being said, Israel is the only country in the Middle East that has a democratic platform, that believes in democracy. We've got to have a relationship with somebody in the Middle East. And it just so happens that Israel's the only one we have. All right, moving on. Black progressives are going on an economic fast. No, that doesn't mean that they're not spending money. It should, but it means that they're only going to spend money with Black businesses. And they're starting with boycotting Target. Not Walmart, even though Walmart also got rid of their DEI push, but they're trying to boycott. So they're starting with boycotting Target, and they are pushing for people to boycott any company that is refusing to push DEI.
Calling the conscientious Christian community all over this country, I am calling for a 40-day fast from Target, beginning on March the 5th. 100,000 conscientious Christians. You don't have to be Black, Latino, Asian, white. 100,000. You're going to sign this commitment to be a part of this 40-day fast. 100,000 of you, bare minimal. I'm asking you that after service, you'll go to targetfast.org. Targetfast.org. I want you to share with everybody on your job, every person in your home, every person in your sphere of influence, every person who follows you on social media. I am believing for 100,000 people are going to sign this covenant commitment of not just prayer, but fasting from Target. Here's what is amazing. Listen to me, because what we learned from the Montgomery bus boycott is that racist America doesn't respond to speeches. They respond to dollars. Come on, and if they start losing $29 million a day for 40 days, we will break the back of the system.
I have 3 reasons why I believe in my heart that this is just not going to work. Number 1, it's too emotional. It's not connected to like a daily activity or experience that is a direct result of the removal of DEI. And when people are boycotting and doing sit-ins, particularly in the 50s and the 60s, it was because they felt the pain of segregation. There isn't any pain felt when I purchase an item from a non-Black supplier versus a Black supplier. And if you're not going to do this across the board, then it's pointless. And it's impossible to truly do it across the board, which leads me into the second point, and the second reason why I think this is a dumb strategy. And that's that the Black community makes up 13% of the population. 13% of the population does not own enough or produce enough to only do business with ourselves. Unfortunately, my community, the Black community, are consumers, and pulling the dollar can cause a major ripple effect, but the ripple effect will come immediately when the dollar is brought right back into the swing of things, when it's discovered that it's really not going anywhere. Because you're pulling a dollar from Target to go spend it in Walmart. I mean, it just makes no sense. So that's another issue. And that leads me to my third reason why I think this is a terrible, terrible idea. And it's because I think we're putting the cart before the horse. I mean, organizing a financial boycott when so many of our people isn't managing their own personal budget, more or less understand how the economic fight even works. It's a waste of time that I believe is going to go nowhere. And how about we look at this and we try to figure out how we can start by strengthening our kids in math and reading, and then how can we pull up our percentage of two-parent households or clean up the crime in our neighborhoods. I see all of this I see all of the time when I see my people jumping over these hoops to try to do all these grand schemes and grand plans and things that they think is going to somehow do something. But the biggest impact we can make as a community is to clean up our neighborhoods. It's to do the things that we can control. It's not jumping over the root to address the fruit. Speaking of the root, moving on to my next issue. Moving on to my next topic. Speaking of the root, actress Blake Lively is in a fight. She claims the root problem is sexual harassment, while the accused, Jason Baldoni, believes that the root issue is control. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni have filed lawsuits against each other following Lively's accusation of sexual harassment on the set of the movie It Ends With Us. And it's a plan to damage her reputation. That's what she's claiming. She's claiming that he is sexually harassing her and trying to ruin her reputation. Justin Baldoni is suing Blake Lively and actor Ryan Reynolds, who I think is her boyfriend, for or maybe husband. I don't know if they're married or not. I think they have a child. I'm not sure. But anyway, he's suing Blake and Ryan for at least $400 million in damages, claiming they hijacked the production and marketing of the movie. A New York federal judge, Louis Lehman, has set the trial for March 9th, 2026, and may combine the lawsuits for the trial. The judge instructed both sides to prepare for the upcoming trial date. So what's going on? First of all, I suggest you follow Candace Owens, as she has been really, really all up in the details of this. And so there's a few things that stood out to me as I was following this story that I wanted to talk about. But if you want to know the full story, please go watch Candace Owens's podcast. So what I hear is how much feminism is to blame, keeping in mind that everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But when I read that Blake Lively said to Justin Baldoni, who walked in on her while she was breastfeeding, that it made her feel uncomfortable, to then see Justin drop a text message that reads, "I'm only breastfeeding, come in." So in other words, she put in her case that she felt like she was being sexually harassed by when Justin decided that he wanted to when he walked in on her while she was breastfeeding. However, so she felt uncomfortable, she felt sexually harassed. However, he drops a text message from Blake to him on that same day telling him to come in because she's only breastfeeding. I immediately thought, oh no, an emotional woman with zero emotional restraint and a weak man beside her. And that is what I have discovered. I discovered that if you see in phase 3 and 4 of feminism, which started in the 90s until the present day, we were introduced to the Me Too movement, we were introduced to the cancel culture, and both are being used, in my opinion. You have Blake referring to her two friends as dragons from Game of Thrones. At least she's talking about Taylor Swift being one of them, as a way of destroying Justin's reputation if he doesn't comply to her demands, although it's his project. These feminist movements have been weaponized, and if Justin didn't have these messages or the courage to fight back, he probably would have lost this fight altogether. All of this false strength that is being bestowed on women is exactly why I'm detoxing feminism and only embracing biblical femininity. You can check out my journey on my YouTube series called Detoxing Feminism. After the break, we are going to dive into a topic that is certainly on the kitchen table, the Department of Education. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3. We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs31:8@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's topic is the U.S. Department of Education. Do we need them? Before we discuss if we should dismantle the Department of Education, we must first understand where it came from in the first place. The U.S. Department of Education was established during the administration of President Jimmy Carter. The department became an agency in 1980. The roots of the department lie in a series of initiatives aimed at improving education across the nation, particularly following the Civil War and during the period of Reconstruction. These initiatives include the creation of the Bureau of Education in 1867, which aimed to collect data and promote education on a national scale. However, the Bureau of Education in 1867 had its challenges, much of the same challenges we are seeing in debates today. The Bureau of Education had limited power and authority, which restricted its ability to mandate changes or enforce educational policies at a state level. The establishment of the Bureau faced resistance from states, particularly those that preferred local control over education without federal oversight. Initially, the Bureau's efforts often centered predominantly on the education of white children, neglecting the needs of Black children and other groups post-emancipation. The Bureau often struggled with limited funding and resources, which hindered its ability to implement substantive educational reforms or support initiatives effectively. Lastly, the Bureau's status and functions were seen as temporary and lacked continuity in long-term educational policy, leading to fluctuating interest and investment in its initiatives. So as you can see, creating the Federal Department of Education of any sort is often met with some level of resistance, primarily from those who believe that states can manage their education needs better than the federal government. Today, the primary purpose of the Department of Education is to oversee federal education programs, ensure compliance with education-related laws, and promote educational equity. Interesting. That was before the Trump administration came in. Now I'm hoping they're promoting educational equality, not equity. It works to provide access to quality education, improve student outcomes, and support initiatives that encourage education is available to all Americans, empowering them to achieve their potential. Keeping in mind, every state has its own education department. The Department of Education maintains a connection to state departments of education, providing them with funding, resources, and guidelines to implement educational standards and policies. While the federal government sets overarching educational policies, states are responsible for managing and implementing these policies at the local level, which allows for adaptability to the unique needs of different communities. Other areas where the department is supposed to be used is through various programs and initiatives aimed to address issues such as special education, adult education, and vocational training, ensuring that all individuals have opportunities to learn and grow. Much of my criticism is centered around whether we need a federal department as well as state departments. So let's look at the responsibilities of some of these state departments of state departments, state education departments, now that we've discussed some of the roles and responsibilities of the federal department. So the purpose of the state departments of education is to ensure the effective administration and implementation of educational policies, programs, and resources at the state level. Their primary functions include establishing and enforcing educational standards and learning objectives that align with state and federal guidelines, ensuring that all students receive a high quality education, distributing state and federal funding to public school systems, overseeing budgeting processes, and ensuring that resources are allocated effectively to support schools and students. Managing the certification process for educators is another responsibility for state school boards or statewide departments of education, ensuring that teachers meet required qualifications and providing ongoing professional development opportunities to improve teaching practices. State departments oversee various educational programs, including special education, vocational training. Heard that before, right? That's what the federal government is supposed to be doing too, but apparently the state is doing it as well. Early childhood education, after school programs to ensure that they meet state and federal requirements. Collecting and analyzing data related to student performance, graduation rates, and other educational metrics to inform policy decisions and improve educational outcomes. Providing guidance, support, and resources to local school districts, another responsibility of statewide departments of education, helping them implement educational initiatives that comply with state regulations, promoting equality and access and education for all students, addressing disparities based on race, socioeconomic status, and disability. Now, that is where I think we've gotten out of hand. But the school is supposed to ensure that people are not being discriminated against. Engaging with parents, community members, and stakeholders to gather input and support for educational initiatives, fostering a collaborative approach to education. And last but certainly not least, developing state education policies that address current educational challenges and implementing those policies to improve the overall educational landscape. Woo! That's all of what, that's a lot. That's a lot. It's a lot of responsibility on the state to also have a federal program. Now that we are clear on what the federal department does and what our state departments do, what is Trump trying to do? Well, it's being reported that Trump is preparing an executive order aimed at eventually closing the Department of Education, as reported by the Washington Post. Of course, they're going to report it. They hate them. But anyway, according to the media, the draft order directs the Education Department to begin diminishing itself, according to 3 anonymous sources. So these are leaks that are coming out of the White House. It's being said that about 20 people from the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, are working to cut spending and staff within the Education Department. Trump has emphasized throughout his campaign the need to return education to state control, stating that the U.S. spends significantly on education but ranks poorly in outcomes. And we do. We spend a lot of money on education to not be at the top. As the 2025 department manages funding for K through 12 schools, including significant programs like Title I, which supports low-income families. I heard something about Title I possibly being moved into HHS. I'm sorry. Health and Human Services, or it's another department. But I think Health and Human Services is the one that I think stood out to me. Anyway, the IDEA program for students with disabilities, IDEA program, amounting to approximately $28 billion per year. So the funding that is managed through this department is K through 12 school spending, such as programs like Title 12, which support low-income families, and then the IDEA program, or the IDEA program for students with disabilities. And all of this amounts to approximately $28 billion per year. But yet we're not at the top when it comes to education. What are we doing? What are we spending this money on? Okay. Anyway, moving on. The department oversees significant financial aid programs, including Pell Grants for low-income students. I heard Pell Grants would not be touched. There is a concern that if the Department of Education is abolished, existing federal student loans could be transferred to another agency, potentially causing disruptions for borrowers. So they already know. Apparently, the anonymous people already said they weren't going to touch Pell Grant, but of course, they have to still make it a problem. But anyway, another concern by some is that the understanding that the Department of Education provides oversight for-profit colleges, and without it, these institutions might operate under less stringent standards, leaving students with substantial debt and inadequate education. They already have that. What are we talking about? I mean, these for-profit colleges, are we talking about like a lot of online colleges? I have like a degree that, but guys, substantial debt and inadequate education is already going on because we're not leading when it comes to education, but yet we are advocating for canceling student loan debt. So we have a bunch of people that are in debt substantially and do not have adequate education, obviously. All right. Now that we know what everyone else is saying, what is Trump actually saying? Well, we can start by noting that the White House has not provided an official statement regarding the dismantling of the Department of Education. Now, what he has said is that he's considering ways to reduce spending, particularly unnecessary spending. So he hasn't laid out how he will potentially dismantle the department. But I have received an email from the White House that explains their stance on education, and I'm going to share what was in the email with you. So the subject of the email that's being sent out is called Expanding Educational Freedom and Opportunity. The purpose is to seek to improve education and future success for American children, emphasizing that parents deserve the best educational options for their children. According to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, 70% of eighth graders are below proficient in reading and 72% are below proficient in math. I'm reading the email that came from the White House, from President Trump's team, as it relates to their stance on education. Geographically based school assignments geographically based school assignments can raise housing costs in preferred school districts, straining family finances. A failing public education system hinders national competitiveness and negatively affects families and communities. More than a dozen states have enacted universal K through 12 scholarship programs, allowing families to choose the best educational settings. Here in Georgia, we have passed a voucher program that does allow parents to pull their kids and take the money that the state gives to that child and put it in another school, another program, whatever they think is best for their kids. Because you know what we had going on here? Let's be clear now. Even with all the departments of education and the $28 billion, we had kids who were graduating from high school that could not fill out a letter to mail off their college application. Fact. Absolute fact. I was helping a young man prepare for college, and he could not fill out a letter. He could not fill out a check to send in the money to actually submit his application and start the application process. We have kids that are in failing schools that continue to fail over and over and over again, and no one seems to care, producing generations of dumb kids who cannot compete. And then you know what they do? Because they have to survive, they go to crime. All right, I'm gonna get off my soapbox. Now let's talk about funding. According to the email, the Secretary of Education will provide guidance on how states can use federal funds to support K through 12 educational choice initiatives within 60 days. Within 60 days, the Secretary of Education will prioritize education freedom and discretionary grant programs and to be submitted and should submit a plan within 90 days to expand the educational choice for families and teachers. The Secretary of Health and Human Services will issue guidance on how block grants can be used to support families choosing educational alternatives to government options. Love that. Okay. Love that. The Secretary of Defense will review mechanisms for military families to use funds to attend their chosen schools and submit a plan within 90 days. The Secretary of Interior will assess how families of students eligible for BIE, which is the Bureau of Indian Education schools, can utilize federal funding for educational options and submit a plan within 90 days. They maintain that it does not impair existing legal authorities and will be implemented in accordance with applicable laws and available funding. There you have it. Nothing was said about dismantling the department, but a lot about revamping it. And I do believe that the reason why they're going this route is because you have to have there has to be an act of Congress in order to completely dismantle the department. But there are some things that Trump can do if he wants to hurt the department. So now that we've broken down and broken down this whole topic of like what the federal department does as far as education and then what the State Department does, and in terms of Gen Zers, and we've deconstructed it, the Department of Education and all of its information that's being spread around surrounding this topic, what is clear is that President Trump is certainly looking at the Department of Education, but he's not only looking at the Department of Education. I think there are about 16 others that he's watching heavily to see if we need or even necessary. And he's examining through the Office of Efficiency whether or not it should be shut down, or if he should starve it to death until it kills itself, or if the department can be stripped of its power so that, you're there, but it's not really a it's not like it's a working or functioning department. So there's so many things that he could be doing, that he can be doing when it comes to this. And I will say that I am I'm a little concerned about everything that's going on, but only because I know it has to be ran effectively. What I'm seeing in this email that came from the White House is that they are aware of all the different programs and all the different activities that are associated with this department. They are fully aware of it. And I do think that there's a conversation that's being had around how do we do this. I think it's something that you strip over time. And I think that's what they're going to do. I personally believe that this is a great move, and I think it's necessary. And I'm going to tell you what I think should happen, or I'm going to examine what I think is going to happen after we come back from the break. I'm going to give my full breakdown, my full take on this. So let's discuss what I think after the break. You're listening to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. It's Extra 106.3. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies, that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs31:8@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
This is the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3, where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And if you're joining us for the first time, don't worry. You can catch an encore episode tomorrow at 9 a.m. right here on Extra 106.3. And remember, our podcast drops every Tuesday wherever you get your podcast. And if you're feeling eager, you can watch the video podcast right now on YouTube. Just remember to subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble pages, and your likes, comments, and shares are always welcomed. Now grab a seat and let's get back to the table. This is the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3, where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And if you're joining us for the first time, don't worry. You can catch an encore episode tomorrow at 9 a.m. right here on Extra 106.3. And remember, our podcast drops every Tuesday wherever you get your podcast. And if you're feeling eager, you can watch the video podcast right now on YouTube. Just remember to subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble pages, and your likes, comments, and shares are always welcomed. Now grab a seat and let's get back to the table. Before the break, we discussed current events and my take on them. And then we broke down the Department of Education versus both federal and state and what the media is saying about Trump in this department. And then we talked about what is he's actually saying. I read an email that came from the White House that talks about their stance on education, which isn't much about dismantling, but a lot about the state of our education system. So I want to close the show with my take on whether the department should stay or go, and if Trump could dismantle it, period. I've always said that Americans are great at coming up with bright ideas, but we're excellent at executing these ideas, but sometimes we lack the courage to trash them when it's not working or no longer working. Many of our agencies and departments that exist today exist because there was a need. And now that the need has been addressed or not met at all in the present method, we don't know when we should change our minds or do something different. And at what point do we change our mind and go in a different direction? And if the role of the state education department, the state level, now, okay, if the role of the state education department is to set educational standards, manage funding and resource allocation, manage teacher certification and professional development, to do program oversight, to do data collection and reporting, to support local school districts, advocacy for educational equality, community engagement, policy development and implementation. If this is the role of our state education departments, why do we need the Department of Education on the federal level? It feels like a huge duplication of services, having a federal department doing the same thing as state departments. And I personally believe that when this country was formed on the basis of federalism, which is states' rights, I know you want to make it federal, but it's not. But I personally believe that when our country was formed on the basis of states' rights, I still believe the government style of choice for this country, it is the style of choice that strengthens us rather than fights against us. And I don't think we should fight against it. I believe there is no better oversight for our state education than our state system. So, do we dismantle the Department of Education? Some argue that the Department of Education was established by Congress, meaning that it would require congressional action to dismantle it. I would say the department was established by Jimmy Carter, who pulled all of them together. And whether there needs to be a House vote or not, which is what I'm hearing, but we got to think about that one. What is clear is that the president can ensure the budget for the department is severely cut, forcing a reduction in spending and influences. So to dismantle or not to dismantle, what do I say? I say dismantle it. Tear it down to the ground. Take a portion of the funding and strengthen state departments and allow the states to determine what is best for their children, especially considering that all students are different and all challenges are different. And when you have states that will benefit from school choice, and the parents in the state wish to have school choice, and the leaders in the state department are in support of school choice, and the state government majority is a fan of school choice, what happens when the federal department says, nope, we don't like school choice for your state? Who cares what your people think? Who cares what your people want? I don't live there. I don't have to. I am king, and we say no. Is that federalism? Is that states' rights? Not at all. But it's how we slip into communism. And I personally believe that we are at a pivotal moment. And if we continue to fight for the status quo, we will continue to get the status quo and some. And if we're not careful, we'll get what we don't want. So what do you think? Should the Department of Education be dismantled? Should it be destroyed, tore down, tear up, let it go? Like what I'm saying. Should it be severely reduced? Should we keep it but just cut the budget? Or should it remain the same? The federal education department has been doing a great job. Let's keep it the same. Let me know in the comment section. And remember, if you're on YouTube, like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you're on Rumble, do all the things as well. If you are grabbing your podcast, wherever you get your podcast right now, just remember to rate the show. But don't forget to tell me, should we dismantle the Department of Education? Should we severely cut its funding, or should we keep it the same? As always, thank you so much for joining. And remember, stay unafraid, unapologetic, and never stop seeking the truth. I'll see you next week.
When you buy a Subaru from Subaru of Gwinnett, you're buying more than a vehicle. You're buying safety for your family, an investment that will hold its value, and something that will last a long time. You're buying trust. For a limited time, celebrate all the 2025 models during the Subaru A Lot to Love event, now through March 31st. Whether you're looking to match your adventurous spirit with the 2025 Subaru Outback or lean on the reliability of the 2025 Subaru Forester, Subaru of Gwinnett has the perfect fit for your family. Stop in for a test drive on Satellite Boulevard in Duluth or start your shopping online at SubaruofGwinnett.com.